The pizza place I worked at was about to close, and I was eagerly getting ready to go home. The clock ticked towards the end of my shift when suddenly, the phone rang, breaking the silence of the empty restaurant. Being the only one manning the counter that night, I hesitantly picked up the phone. But there was nothing but complete silence on the other end, so I quickly hung up, assuming it was just a prank call. However, barely a minute later, the phone rang again, and this time, I mustered the courage to answer it once more. To my surprise, there was a very weak and cold voice of an old woman on the other end. She sounded feeble and requested a regular pizza to be delivered. I remained polite on the phone, trying to hide my frustration as I just wanted to go home after a long day. On the inside, I was screaming with impatience, knowing I would have to stay even longer for this late-night delivery. Reluctantly, I informed my boss about the delivery request. He told me I had to go, which upset me initially. But then, the thought of getting a good tip from the elderly woman, who usually tipped well, made me reconsider. So, I took down the address and told her I would be there soon, only to hear her abruptly hang up without acknowledging my response. Feeling slightly annoyed by her rudeness, I yelled to the chef that I needed one regular pizza and then headed out for the delivery. My boss had informed me that I could go straight home after completing this delivery since the police would be closing soon. As I drove, the GPS led me to the quiet side of town, and I finally arrived at the address. The house stood alone, a small one-floor structure in a desolate and eerie block. The darkness engulfed the surroundings, and no lights were on in the house, which made me wonder if I had been given the wrong address. I hesitantly approached the front door with the pizza in hand and rang the doorbell, but there was no response. Trying not to panic, I rang it again, hoping she was just slow to answer. Still, there was no sign of life from inside the house. Doubts crept into my mind, but I refused to leave without attempting to deliver the pizza. Just as I was about to give up and head back to my car, I glanced to my side and saw a figure standing at the window. Fear gripped me, and my heart pounded in my chest. However, curiosity got the better of me, and I approached the window to get a better look at the person inside. It was an elderly woman, perhaps in her late 70s, with a blank expression on her face. I called out to her through the glass, informing her that I had her pizza, but she didn't react or acknowledge my words. Feeling uneasy, I yelled louder this time, hoping to get her attention. Suddenly, a chilling smile spread across her face, sending shivers down my spine. It was a smile that seemed devoid of any warmth or humanity. The sight of that unsettling grin made me decide to abandon the delivery. I quickly retreated to my car, placing the pizza on the passenger seat, and took out my phone to text my boss about the strange encounter. As I was typing the message, I couldn't resist glancing to my right one last time. To my horror, the elderly woman was now standing right outside my passenger side window, still wearing that eerie smile. Panic surged through me, and I wasted no time in putting my car in gear, speeding away without looking back. The image of that haunting smile haunted my thoughts as I drove away from that creepy house. Once I reached the pizza place, I immediately told my boss about the bizarre incident. From that night on, my boss decided never to make me do a late-night delivery again. The unsettling encounter with the old woman stayed with me for a long time, leaving an indelible mark on my memory. I couldn't help but wonder who she was and what her intentions were. Was it just an eccentric old lady with no ill intent, or was there something more sinister lurking beneath that disturbing smile? I'll never forget that night, and it serves as a chilling reminder to be cautious, even in the most routine and ordinary situations. The mysteries of that night remain unsolved, leaving me with a lingering sense of unease whenever I think about it. Four years ago, when I was still in high school, I had an unforgettable and chilling experience while delivering pizzas. It was one of those evenings where I was about to finish my shift when I received an order for a delivery. Reluctantly, I hopped into my 1999 Camry, which was my trusty companion for pizza deliveries, and set the GPS to the address provided. Living upstate meant all pizza deliveries were long drives, and this one was no exception. As I drove through the forested dirt roads, the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow over the surroundings. Finally, after about 15 minutes of navigating the lonely roads, I reached the destination. It was an old, secluded cottage-like house, almost entirely made of wood, sitting amidst a vast expanse of forest. The grass around the house had grown wild and unkept, reaching knee-height. While such sights were common in the area, something about this place felt unsettling. I approached the front door with the pizza in hand and knocked loudly since there was no doorbell. Within seconds, I heard footsteps from inside, reaching the door but stopping just short of opening it. A strange sensation washed over me, as if someone was peering at me through the door, making me feel observed and uneasy. Suddenly, I noticed a pair of eyes staring back at me from the gap in the door. Trying to maintain composure, I called out, "It's the pizza guy." A low, harsh voice responded, instructing me to bring the pizza around to the back of the house. I hesitated, feeling an increasing sense of discomfort, but knowing my boss would not appreciate a return without payment, I reluctantly decided to comply. Despite my trepidation, I proceeded through the uncut grass and around the back of the house, where I discovered a small patio with a table and 4 chairs arranged around it. In one of the chairs, I saw the head of a person facing away from me. With caution, I walked over and called out, "Excuse me." No response. The person remained motionless, which only deepened my unease. I called out again, louder this time, but still there was no reaction. Just as I was about to investigate further, a voice behind me startled me. "Over here, come over here. I want to show you something." I turned around to find a man poking his head out from the corner of the house, a crazed smile on his face. Panic surged through me, and without thinking, I sprinted back around the house, clutching the pizza tightly. I jumped into my car, started the engine, and sped away from that creepy place. Once I felt safe enough, I pulled over to the side of the road and called the police to report the strange encounter. After their investigation, I was informed that there was no evidence of anyone having occupied the house for a long time. The realization of the potential danger I had narrowly avoided left me shaken to my core. In the following days, I decided to quit my pizza delivery job, unable to shake off the haunting memories of that evening. I often wonder what would have happened to me if I had followed the man's invitation to see something in the patio chair. The thought sends shivers down my spine, and to this day, I still regret not turning my head to uncover the enigmatic figure seated in that ominous chair. Late one fateful night, I found myself on a shift doing late-night deliveries in the Poconos, a rural and secluded area surrounded by trees. It was dark and foggy, making the roads even more eerie than usual. As I drove down a familiar shortcut, my heart pounding, I suddenly slammed on the brakes when a figure leaped out from the bushes onto the road. The sickening thud and bump as my car hit the person confirmed the unthinkable. I had just struck someone. Panicking, I got out of my car to check on the man. He was lying motionless by my car tire, wearing a black hoodie with the hood pulled up. My mind raced with questions. Why was he in the middle of nowhere? What had caused him to jump in front of my car? As I grappled with the shock of the situation, I heard a scream for help coming from the woods to my left. My heart skipped a beat. Someone else was in trouble. I glanced at the man lying by my car and, foolishly, decided to follow the sound of the scream. Leaving the injured man behind, I ventured into the dark and foggy woods, praying that I could offer aid to whoever was in distress. In the woods, my heart pounded in my ears, and the adrenaline surged through my veins. The silence was deafening, except for the haunting sounds of nocturnal creatures. I called out, desperately hoping for a response, but only the echo of my own voice came back to me. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of a foot crushing leaves on the ground. My blood ran cold, and I turned towards the source of the noise. There, hidden behind a tree, was the figure of a person, observing me intently. Fear gripped me, and I wasted no time in fleeing back to my car, constantly looking over my shoulder to ensure I wasn't being followed. When I finally reached my car, the man I had hit was nowhere to be found. I didn't stick around to wonder where he went. I just sped away down the road, my heart still racing. Despite the terrifying encounter, I was determined to fulfill my responsibility, so I continued with the pizza delivery. Arriving at the customer's house, a middle-aged woman answered the door. As she paid for the pizza, I noticed her eyes shifting behind me. Confused, I turned to see what had captured her attention. To my horror, she asked, "They let you guys have delivery partners now?" Bewildered, I questioned what she meant. She pointed to the backseat of my car and said, "You've got someone with you." My heart sank as I turned to find someone sitting in the backseat of my car, the same man I had hit earlier. Without wasting a moment, I borrowed the woman's phone and called the police. They arrived quickly, but the person in my backseat had vanished by then. The police, upon searching my car, found a bloodstained knife on the floor where the man had been hiding. The incident left me traumatized, and the memory of that night haunts me to this day. The thought of how things could have turned out had I not made that pizza delivery chills me to my core. I now shudder to imagine the dangers that lurk in the darkness, hidden within the fog, waiting for unsuspecting victims. The experience has forever changed me, and I'll never forget the terror and the close call with danger that night.